Mark Reynolds sat in his office, staring at a growing pile of customer complaints. His once thriving deli chain, built over a decade, was now plagued with issues: rude service, long wait times, and declining employee morale. Despite efforts to address these problems through district managers, their reports always painted a rosy picture. Frustration gnawed at him. Something wasn't adding up. Mark prided himself on running an honest business, but the disconnect between management's reports and customer feedback made him uneasy. Was he being misled? Were employees truly struggling? Determined to see the reality firsthand, Mark made a bold decision: he would go undercover as an entry-level worker in one of his busiest locations. With the help of a professional makeup artist, he transformed into Mike, a scruffy, bearded trainee. As he adjusted his hoodie in the mirror, he took a deep breath. Tomorrow, he'd step into his own company completely unnoticed. Mark Reynolds sat still as a professional makeup artist applied a fake beard and fitted him with glasses. He traded his usual tailored suit for a worn-out hoodie and jeans, completing his transformation into Mike, an unassuming new hire. Walking into one of his busiest delis, located in a working-class neighborhood, Mark felt an unusual mix of nerves and excitement. He had built this company, yet no one recognized him. The deli was chaotic, customers lined up impatiently, the kitchen clattered with activity, and employees moved frantically behind the counter. The manager, Carl, barely glanced at him. "You're the new guy? Great. Just don't screw up," Carl grunted, handing him an apron without introduction. Mark swallowed his pride and nodded. He was no longer the CEO, just another worker. As he stepped behind the counter, he braced himself. For the first time, he would experience his business from the ground up. Mark was immediately paired with Mia, a young, exhausted-looking employee who still managed a warm smile. "Hey, I'm Mia. It gets crazy during lunch, but I'll show you the basics." As the rush hit, the deli descended into chaos. Orders were mixed up, impatient customers grew frustrated, and the small team scrambled to keep up. Despite the madness, Mia remained calm, apologizing to customers and fixing mistakes where she could. Carl, the manager, barked orders from the back but never lifted a finger to help. When a new cashier hesitated while ringing up an order, Carl snapped, "Do you even know how to do your job?" The girl flushed red, eyes downcast. Mark clenched his fists but forced himself to stay quiet. He had expected stress, but not this level of dysfunction. He realized that for employees like Mia, this wasn't just a bad day, it was every day. By mid-afternoon, Mark noticed Mia hadn't taken a single break. She moved from task to task, her energy visibly waning, yet she never slowed down. "Don't you get a lunch break?" he asked casually. Mia hesitated before answering, her voice quiet. "I can't afford to eat here. Even with the employee discount, it's too expensive." She forced a small smile. "I usually bring food from home, but not this week." Mark felt a lump in his throat. His own employees couldn't afford to eat at his deli? He had spent years perfecting the brand, ensuring quality ingredients and efficiency, yet he had overlooked something so basic: his workers' well-being. Mia quickly changed the subject, brushing off the conversation as if she were used to it. But Mark couldn't shake the weight of her words. For the first time, he realized just how disconnected he had become from his own company. The lunch rush showed no mercy, and the pressure inside the deli was palpable. Mark was doing his best to keep up when a teenage cashier hesitated while ringing up an order. Her hands trembled slightly as she corrected the mistake. Carl, who had been lingering near the register, pounced. "Do you even know how to do your job?" he barked, his voice cutting through the noise. "If you keep messing up, you're out of here." The girl's face turned crimson, her eyes welling with tears as she mumbled an apology. Customers exchanged awkward glances, but no one intervened. Carl, seemingly satisfied with his display of dominance, turned away without another word. Mark clenched his fists, his stomach twisting with anger. He wanted to rip off his disguise and fire Carl on the spot, but he needed more. If this was how Carl acted in public, what else was happening behind closed doors? The next morning, Mark arrived 15 minutes early, lingering near the employee entrance. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly baked bread. One by one, staff trickled in, their faces tired but resigned. Mia arrived last, clutching a worn-out lunchbox. She gave Mark a small, weary smile before heading inside. As Mark prepped for the day, he overheard two cooks whispering near the sandwich station. "Did you hear about Sarah?" one asked. "She quit last week. Said she couldn't take Carl's screaming anymore." "I don't blame her," the other muttered. "He's been worse lately." Mia sighed. "We're all scared to mess up. If we complain, he cuts our hours." Mark's stomach knotted. Employees weren't just miserable, they were trapped. He had suspected Carl was a problem, but now he knew. Carl didn't just rule with intimidation, he controlled their livelihoods. The deli was buzzing with the lunch rush when an elderly man in a wheelchair struggled to maneuver through the crowded line. His hands shook as he tried to steady himself. "I just need a little help, please," he said softly. Carl, standing near the register, barely glanced up before turning back to lecture a cashier about upselling. Before Mark could react, Mia had already stepped from behind the counter. She crouched beside the man and smiled warmly. "What can I get for you today, sir?" The man's face lit up with relief. "Just a turkey sandwich and coffee." Mia bypassed the line, placed the order herself, and helped him find a seat in the corner. Carl stormed over, his face red. "Mia, what the hell was that? You don't leave your station during a rush." Mia bit her lip but stayed silent. Mark felt his patience snap. Carl's cruelty had gone too far. After the rush subsided, Mark found Mia restocking ingredients near the back hallway. She moved quickly, her shoulders tense from Carl's outburst. "You didn't deserve that," Mark said softly. Mia shook her head. "It's fine. I need this job. I can't afford to lose it just because Carl's in a bad mood." Mark frowned. "Has he treated you like this before?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It's not just me. He's like that with everyone. We're all scared to mess up because if we do, he either yells or cuts our hours." Mark clenched his jaw. Carl wasn't just a bad manager, he was actively making life harder for his employees. Mia sighed. "I try not to let it get to me. I just do my job and keep my head down." But Mark had seen enough. Keeping quiet wasn't an option anymore. Later that afternoon, while taking out the trash, Mark paused near the back door as he heard Carl's voice, low and smug, on a phone call. "Yeah, I've been skimming a little off the top," Carl chuckled. "The higher-ups don't notice. They're too busy looking at spreadsheets to see what's really going on." Mark's breath caught. Skimming money? His mind raced. If Carl was stealing, it explained why payroll and inventory weren't aligning. Carefully, Mark backed away, keeping his cover intact. He needed proof. That night, he sat in his home office, combing through payroll records and recent inventory reports. His heart pounded as discrepancies surfaced, cash missing from unrecorded sales, unaccounted expenses, altered numbers. Carl wasn't just a bad manager, he was a thief. Mark clenched his fists. Tomorrow, everything would change. It was time to hold Carl accountable. Mark spent hours cross-referencing payroll records with inventory reports. The evidence was undeniable. Carl had been stealing from the deli for months, possibly longer. Cash sales didn't match the reported earnings, and inventory numbers showed discrepancies that couldn't be explained away. Carl had been pocketing unrecorded sales, knowing that corporate wouldn't dig deep enough to notice. But now Mark knew. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He couldn't blow his cover yet. If he confronted Carl too soon, Carl might try to cover his tracks or even disappear. Mark needed a plan, a way to expose him without tipping him off. Tomorrow he would go back to the deli as Mike, the trainee, but he wouldn't be watching anymore. He would be setting the stage for Carl's downfall. With a final glance at the incriminating reports, Mark shut his laptop. Carl's time was up. Amid the usual lunch rush, a young boy, no older than 10, stepped up to the counter, nervously clutching a crumpled $5 bill. He glanced around before speaking in a soft voice. "Excuse me, what's the smallest sandwich I can get? I'm really hungry." Mia knelt slightly to meet his eye level. "Are you sure that's all you want?" The boy nodded. "It's all I can afford." Mark watched as Mia hesitated, then made a quiet decision. Without a second glance at the register, she grabbed a full-size sandwich, a bag of chips, and a bottle of water. She slid the food across the counter with a warm smile. "Here you go. No charge today. Just promise me you'll eat it all. Okay?" The boy's eyes lit up. "Really? Thank you so much." Mark felt a lump in his throat. Mia's kindness was instinctive, but he knew Carl wouldn't approve. The lunch rush had just started when a young boy, no older than 10, nervously approached the counter, clutching a crumpled $5 bill. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Can I get the smallest sandwich you have? I'm really hungry." Mia leaned down, meeting his eyes. "Are you sure that's all you want?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. "It's all I can afford." Without a second thought, Mia grabbed a full-sized sandwich, a bag of chips, and a bottle of water. She slid them across the counter with a gentle smile. Here you go on the house. Just promise me you'll eat it all, okay? The boy's eyes widened. Really? Thank you so much. He clutched the food and hurried out. Mark, watching from the side, felt a lump in his throat. Mia had done something simple yet profound. She had chosen kindness over company policy. Carl stormed out from the back, his face flushed red. Mia, did you just give away free food? Mia stayed calm. It was just a sandwich, Carl. The kid was hungry. Carl's voice rose. I don't care. This isn't a charity. That's coming out of your paycheck. A few customers glanced over, sensing the tension. Mia's hands trembled, but she didn't argue. Mark stepped forward before he could stop himself. Carl, it was one sandwich. Let it go. Carl turned, glaring. Stay out of this, Mike. You're just a trainee. Don't tell me how to run my store. Mark held his ground. Then maybe you should run it better. Carl's face twisted in confusion and anger. Mark could feel the power shifting. He wasn't just observing anymore, he was challenging Carl, piece by piece. As the last customer left and the doors were locked, Mark took a deep breath. It was time. Mia, can you stay a bit longer? I need to talk to everyone. The employees gathered near the sandwich station, curiosity in their eyes. Carl stood by the register, arms crossed, already irritated. Mark exhaled and reached for his glasses. Slowly, he pulled them off, followed by the fake beard. My name isn't Mike, he said firmly. I'm Mark Reynolds. I own this deli and every other one in this chain. The room fell silent. Mia's eyes widened in shock. A cook dropped his spatula. Carl's face turned pale. Mark looked around at his stunned employees. I came here undercover because I needed to see the truth for myself. And what I've seen, it's unacceptable. Carl finally found his voice. Wait, what? But Mark wasn't done yet. Justice was coming. Carl's face twisted in disbelief. You're joking, right? Mark's expression remained cold. No, Carl. I know about the skimming. I heard you brag about it on the phone. I've already confirmed it in the records. Carl's confidence wavered. You don't have proof. Mark stepped forward. I do. Payroll, inventory discrepancies, it all lines up. You've been stealing from this company while treating your staff like dirt. His voice hardened. You're done. Effective immediately, you're fired. Carl's mouth opened, then shut. You can't just... I can... Mark cut him off. And I just did. The other employees watched in stunned silence as Carl's bravado crumbled. For the first time, he looked small. Clean out your locker and leave, Mark said, his tone final. Carl stood frozen for a moment before grabbing his things and storming out, slamming the door behind him. For the first time, the deli felt lighter. Mark turned to the remaining employees, his expression softening. I'm sorry it took me this long to see what was happening here. You all deserve better. He looked at Mia. Mia, you've shown leadership, kindness, and dedication, qualities this deli needs. I want to promote you to manager. Mia's eyes widened. Me? But I don't know if I'm ready. Mark smiled. You already do the work of a manager. It's time you get paid for it. Tears welled in Mia's eyes, but she nodded. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Mark said proudly. Mark faced his employees, determined to set things right. Starting today, we're making changes. Every employee gets a free meal during their shift, no exceptions. Breaks are mandatory. And from now on, respect is non-negotiable. No one should dread coming to work. The staff exchanged stunned glances before smiles slowly spread across their faces. Mia wiped her eyes, nodding. Thank you. This means everything. Mark nodded. This deli should be a place you're proud to work at, not a place you survive. For the first time in a long time, hope filled the room. 2 weeks later, Mark walked into the deli, not as Mike, but as himself. Dressed in a casual button-up and jeans, he stepped through the front door, immediately sensing the difference. The atmosphere was lighter. The staff moved with purpose, but without panic. Customers smiled, greeted employees by name, and the once tense environment now buzzed with warmth. Behind the counter, Mia wore a crisp manager's apron, her name embroidered neatly. She was training a new hire, her tone patient and encouraging. Mark felt a swell of pride. Mia spotted him and beamed. Mark, you're back. Employees waved, some calling out greetings. Mark smiled. I just wanted to check in. Mia stepped around the counter. Things are so much better. The free meals, the breaks, it's made a huge difference. Mark looked around, nodding. The deli had transformed. And for the first time, he truly felt connected to his company again as they talked. Mia's eyes lit up. Remember that little boy I gave the sandwich to? Mark nodded. Of course. He came back a few days later with his mom. Mia smiled. She told me they'd fallen on hard times and wanted to thank me. She even tried to pay me back. Mark's chest tightened. What did you say? I told her it wasn't necessary. Mia's voice softened. She looked so relieved. It wasn't just about the food. It was about someone caring. Mark exhaled. A simple act of kindness had made a lasting impact. And that's what truly mattered. Before leaving, Mark pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Mia. What's this? She asked, puzzled. Call it a thank you bonus, Mark said. For stepping up when things were at their worst. For taking care of this deli and its people. And for proving that kindness matters. Mia carefully opened the envelope, her eyes widening at the check inside. Mark, this is too much. I can't accept this. You can, Mark said firmly. And you will. You've earned it. Tears welled in Mia's eyes. Thank you. I don't even know what to say. You already have, Mark replied, smiling as Mark stepped outside. He took one last look at the deli. It was no longer just a business. It was a place of integrity, respect, and heart. For years, he had relied on spreadsheets and manager reports, believing he understood his company. But it took going undercover to truly see the people behind it. He vowed never to let that disconnect happen again. With a deep breath, he walked to his car, feeling something he hadn't in a long time: fulfillment. This wasn't just about fixing one deli. It was about leading differently. And this was only the beginning.